Welcome to Pario magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I'm joined by an Australian singer-songwriter who recently released her sophomore album, Positive Spin. Welcome to Pario magazine, Gretta Ray.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So we're here today to chat about your journey through the world of music and the new album. Before we dive into that, though, do you want to give our audience a brief introduction as to who Gretta is away from the world of music?
Oh, away from the world of music. That's always an interesting one. I never know how to answer it. Yes, music's kind of been my whole life forever. So away from the world of music doesn't make too much sense, but I will say that I live in Melbourne in Australia. I live in a little flat in Fitzroy, and outside of this job, I have a very quiet, lovely little life, and I have a really wonderful friendship group, and I have really wonderful family. And when I'm not insanely busy with work, I spend as much time with those people as I can. So yeah.
It's always good to have that support group when you're chasing sort of a crazy entertainment dream.
Yeah, it's very important and very grounding, I would say.
So, in terms of music, when and how did you first discover this passion?
Well, when did I first discover the passion? I have been singing since I was a baby, essentially. But I started singing in a community choir from when I was 5, and I did that up until I was 18. So I kind of had vocal training all throughout my childhood and teenage years, and learned a lot about music theory in the process. I started playing instruments when I was in primary school as well, and that went into high school. In terms of songwriting, I started writing songs when I was 7 and have kind of been obsessed ever since. So yeah, it's been a very interwoven factor in my life since prior to when it became my job.
So, at what point was it that it switched from, okay, this is kind of just a hobby that's all consuming into, okay, now let's pursue this as a potential career?
Well, I think I probably would have been about 14. I had gone to a really wonderful high school that had a really wonderful arts department, and I had an incredible singing teacher, and I would play her all of my songs that I was writing first. And she introduced me to a producer that I worked on my first and second EPs with. And so that experience in the studio when I was 15, 16 for the first time was kind of when things switched over, and I realized just how much I was going to creatively thrive in that environment and how addictive it all became, that creative process. So yeah, I would say around then. And then we put out the EP in 2016, and then later that year we put out a song called Drive, and that kind of launched the project essentially, which was, yeah, it was my final year of high school, so it was a busy one, a busy year.
Yeah, that's a very busy time to launch into a career straight away.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned your music teacher. Would you say she was sort of one of your biggest influences musically growing up? And how have those influences changed over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that a good teacher, I think really good teachers are like the backbone of everything, really. And my mum is a teacher as well. So, I mean, I've kind of grown up really recognizing their importance. And just, yeah, I've also been really fortunate to have a lot of really excellent teachers and mentors. And Miriam at Princess Hill, she was one of them. But yeah, I mean, we're still friends now, and I spent all of my teens looking up to her, and she had a real understanding of who I was as a person and how hungry I was to learn as a student. And yeah, just kind of really nurtured my relationship with my songwriting, and knew that I was going to take it beyond a hobby. So yeah, I would say that kind of all of my creative mentors and teachers throughout my childhood have been very heavily influential.
And how have those influences changed over the years? Do you look to other artists now for inspiration and influence?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've always kind of looked to artists for inspiration as well as my mentors and teachers. probably grew up feeling like the artists that influenced me the most were the ones that were kind of like the most out of reach, I suppose, or, you know, artists that, because I was a kid and I was not in the industry yet. And now that I am a part of it, I think that there's so much I can learn from having like direct conversations with artists. I learn a lot from my friend Maisie, who's an artist. Maisie Peters, an artist in the UK, and she and I have a lot of conversations about the music industry and how much we love songwriting. And I would say that that really impacts how I work, and how I think about the industry. And I've learned a lot from an artist, a local artist in Melbourne, Claire Bowditch has been a wonderful mentor. Missy Higgins was really incredible when I first kind of came onto the scene, and she's been a really dear friend and supporter of mine, and I've been such a fan of Missy since I was a kid. So yeah, I mean, definitely I would say a lot, particularly the female artists in the industry that I am fortunate enough to know personally, have definitely been big influences of mine.
Brilliant. Yeah, sometimes it's not so much working with someone on a creative front, it's just talking about life and the business in general.
Yeah, definitely.
And then focusing now on the album, can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind it?
Hmm. So the album's called Positive Spin, and the inspiration behind, I suppose, the concept of the record is really honing in on my tendency to write about hope, which I think that I've always done in my songwriting. Even in my most like devastating of heartbreak songs, there's always some kind of silver lining in the lyric, and my fans pointed that out to me. And after I kind of recognized it in all of the work that I was doing, I realized that I was even further leaning into that tendency, particularly post pandemic, when I was back out in the world and all I wanted to write about were things that felt a little bit lighter and brighter, and, you know, really wanting to cling to what the experiences that I had kind of, you know, not had during those like lockdown times, and that the world was, you know, fortunately kind of giving back to me. So I think as a result of all of that, we ended up writing a very upbeat, uplifting record that does really focus on, it doesn't necessarily ignore the clouds, but it does very much focus on the silver lining around them. So yeah, I would say that that's kind of what Positive Spin is about. And yeah, I hope that I think my fans have been saying recently that it feels like a really healing record and like a healing chapter, releasing this album. So I'm hoping that that's the purpose that it will serve.
Yeah, it's a very sort of aptly titled album. Like I listened to it the other day, and it does touch on those sort of darker emotions and heartbreak, but there is that sort
Mm.
of glowing brightness lifting it all up at the end.
Yeah, totally.
Is that sort of a reflection of your personality?
Uh, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I have you know, two parents that really focus on the importance of gratitude, and so I think I've kind of grown up really preaching to that. And I think that in terms of just how I've turned to songwriting, I've always used it as a way to kind of come to understand how I'm feeling. So yeah, I do. I suppose that it is kind of somewhat a reflection of my personality for sure. And but I think probably just more so my relationship with gratitude, really. And yeah, how much I prioritize that.
Okay. Yeah. If you're going to put all that effort into a song and writing a song, you don't necessarily want to sit there, write it, and then feel worse about the situation at the end of that.
I really love songs that are kind of like unapologetically sad as well. And like, I think that those writers probably find that process really healing for them. But for me, I think that like if you can actually hear it in the lyric of the song, you can hear that message calling to kind of look up and kind of and you know, move past that feeling. I think that that's really encouraging, and that's just kind of like, yeah, my way of doing songwriting, I suppose, has kind of always been that.
And do you have a favorite track on the album?
Um, I really like, I mean, it's definitely like picking between children, but I really do like a song on the album called You've Already Won, just because it feels very, I don't know, it feels very me. It's very specific to a lot of details in my personal life, and it really paints a picture of all of the things that I love the most. And so I think that song is probably a standout for me.
Okay. Yeah. One that stood out to me was Dear 17. How was
Yeah.
that sort of process of reflecting on yourself and where you've come since being 17?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was cool. I mean, I think that there's a lot of um I don't know, I'm kind of, all signs point to me needing to kind of look back on that age, because that was kind of the time in my life where where my career kind of started. So I think I'm reminded of that version of myself quite frequently. But I wanted to, with this song, kind of discuss that in my own way. And it was one that I wrote by myself. I went and sat at my parents' kitchen bench. I was feeling a little bit down about a few things, and kind of was wondering about how I would kind of report back to my 17-year-old self, who was kind of very full of energy and enthusiasm when it came to things like the music industry. And, kind of, would I, if I could, go back and speak to that version of myself and say, all of these really wonderful things happen, all of these really difficult things happen, they're all equally important. And that's kind of what the song is. It's like a letter to my 17-year-old self, essentially.
Yep. And this is the second album. How has that sort of all evolved? Did that first album influence this record?
Yeah, massively. I think that, like, I am constantly leaning on the work that I've already done. I definitely would never want to detach, like, the already existing discography from a new project, because I think that it's all relevant, because they're all kind of like diaries in a sense, of my life. But yeah, I think that I definitely do reference my previous album, Begin to Look Around, but I think you'll hear it like in the songs and in the lyrics probably more so. I am singing about that earlier work, I suppose, the first two EPs, when I was kind of just building an audience, and there really was this sense of naivety and innocence. And so, yeah, I am in a very different kind of place now. And I feel like in some ways, a lot of the songs and lyrics on Positive Spin kind of sing from this like big sisterly perspective. And yeah, so I kind of think of that time in my life quite fondly, if there's a way that kind of she could have the messages of like this new music that I've made, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's important for there to always be that tether between the records. I find it weird when I hear an artist who puts out a new album and it sounds totally different. Like it feels like a new artist.
Yeah, I think, like, for me, I find it difficult when artists really dismiss the work that they've done. Like, and there's obviously, we can all look back on something that we've made and be like, oh, I think that I could have done that vocal take better, or I think that that lyric should have actually been this. But I think that that's like the beauty of it, is because, like, well, back then when you were writing it, like, that's what you thought it should be, so that's what it should have been. Like, I'm just a real big believer in like them all kind of being little building blocks. And I mean, I love being able to kind of have callbacks to that work, because my audience appreciates it, and also it reminds me that, like, without that release of when I was around 17, I wouldn't be able to do what I get to do now. So we kind of have to be appreciative of all of those things.
And the past few years have been very busy for you. In 2021, you were nominated for an ARIA Award and a J
Mhm.
Award. And then just last year, you had a sold out headline tour, supported Gang of Youth on their arena tour, and racked up over 350 million views on TikTok. Have you had a chance to sort of sit and let all of that sink in?
I haven't had a holiday. I'm like at a point now where I would really like one. No, but yeah, that would be nice. I definitely would love to. Yeah, at the moment it doesn't really feel like there's kind of been like a significant period where I've been able to kind of be like, whoa. And even hearing you read out all of that, I'm like, oh yeah, that was pretty cool, because it's so easy to like just move on to the next thing and keep going and keep going. So it's kind of good to have that reminder to take that time. But I think I have little things throughout my weeks and my busy schedule, where I have like a day, I have an afternoon where I can go down and have like a nice walk by the Mary Creek, which is near where I live. And I can take those moments, but I think, yeah, I wouldn't say yes, there's been a moment of being like, oh, wow, okay, let's just digest all of that. Cause I've been so hungry to keep moving, especially with the element of the pandemic. And I think it's also just in my nature as well. Like, I just want to keep creating. And my friend Maisie, who I mentioned before, we both put out our debut albums on the same day in 2021. And then I think it was like maybe 2 weeks later, we were on a FaceTime call talking about the next album. So we were gonna make, we just had, wanted to keep going. So yeah, sorry, this is a very long answer, but in short, I haven't, but I think that it's definitely in my nature right now, at this point in my life, to just kind of keep moving. And hopefully there will be that time where I can really just like sit and take it all in. And I mean, I'm very grateful for everything that I've been able to do. I feel very lucky.
Yeah, I think especially coming out of that sort of lockdown period, everybody is just like full steam ahead. I don't know what's coming around the corner, so take every
Yeah,
opportunity now.
totally. Well, with the Gang of Youths tour that you mentioned previously, I would open their show with my own set, and then I would have 20 minutes and I would get changed into a different outfit. And then I would go back on stage and I would be their backing vocalist for their whole 2 hour set. And we did that every night and I loved it. I didn't have one moment where I was like, this is quite tiring, even though it definitely was. But I just wanted to be on that stage for as long as possible. So yeah, it was good. I think, yeah, there's something really rewarding about having that excitement and the opportunity as well.
And then sort of keeping everything rolling, you're about to head out for a number of shows all around the country in September. How are you feeling ahead of the tour?
I feel nervous because they're the biggest rooms that I've headlined before. I feel nervous because I've called it the Big Pop Show, which I think, even though it's meant to kind of be tongue in cheek, like is bold in itself as a decision. But the fans have been so dedicated and so loyal and invested with this era so far. And I think that I'm really excited to see them, and I'm excited to get to perform the songs and see how they are adopting them into their own lives and their own stories. I think the process of touring and playing shows and connecting with your audience is the most humanizing part of the job ultimately, because you actually get to all be together in person and you remember the one thing that connects you is the fact that you all really love music. It doesn't really matter if I'm the one that wrote the songs and they're the ones that are listening. Like, we all have the exact same stories and experiences. Like, a lot of my audience is my age group, they're my peers essentially. So I think that it's really grounding for me to see how they work with the new music and what they like the most. And it just feels like I get to kind of reunite with all of these friends of mine. So yeah, I think that will be really fun.
And yeah, obviously, if they're a fan of you, they have some sort of connection to these songs, just like you do in terms of being the writer of them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I released a song a few days ago, and I've been getting a lot of messages of like, oh, I'm watching this music video and just feel like I'm looking at my own life. And I mean, that's kind of all that you can hope for as a writer, really. I want this music to find the people that it needs to reach, and for them to be able to process their own experiences through the music, because that's how I turn to music as well. So yeah.
And then looking beyond the tour, what else is on the horizon for Gretta Ray?
Um, oh man.
Maybe a holiday or back to writing?
Hopefully a holiday at some point, that would be nice. I think that I'm looking to try and spend some more time overseas. I think that I have, kind of been back and forth over the last couple of years since the borders reopened. And I'm really wanting to kind of, be out in the world and be creating and learning new things and kind of growing my artist project. So that's kind of what I'm imagining, but I haven't started thinking about the next project yet, thank God, because it's too soon and I'm too invested in this one. And yeah, when that time comes, I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I really hope that we can kind of indulge and enjoy this chapter right now. And yeah, just kind of really kind of celebrate all of that together. So I'm looking forward to these next couple of months.
Fantastic. So finally, where is the best place for people to support you and track this creative journey moving forward?
Oh, the best place, as in my social media platforms. I probably spend the most amount of time on Instagram and TikTok. They're the places that you will find me talking obsessively a lot about my project. Yeah, and on tour. If you're in Australia, I would really love for people to come along. I think that, you know, being up on stage is where I am at my most my most comfortable. And so I would really love for people to come and see the live experience of the album for sure.
And what is the social media handle so we can make sure everyone gets that?
Oh, I think on both things it's just Gretta Ray.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Nice and easy.
cool. Awesome. Oh, well, thank you so much. This has been great.
No worries. Thank you so much for taking the time and good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thanks so much.